I wanted to chat briefly about tax levy statements and whether they should be explained in California bills. Now, some California bills are deemed a tax levy by the Office of Legislative Counsel. And if you read California legislation, you'll see a section at the very end of a bill, and it'll say simply, this act provides for a tax levy within the meaning of Article 4 of the California Constitution and shall go into immediate effect. Now, if you look in Article 4 of the California Constitution, specifically Section 8C3, it says that statutes calling elections, statutes providing for tax levies or appropriations for the usual current expenses of the state, and urgency statutes shall go into effect immediately upon their enactment. Now, this, of course, raises the question of what exactly is a tax levy. Unfortunately, the term is not defined in either the state constitution nor in statute. But according to the California Office of Legislative Counsel, in California bills, a tax levy means a bill that changes the rate, base, or burden of a tax. For example, a bill that might impose, repeal, or somehow materially alter a state tax will be deemed a tax levy. Now, the attorneys at the Office of Legislative Counsel, they indicate in both the title as well as the digest of the bill whether the bill is a tax levy. Specifically in the title of the bill, it'll contain at the end of that title the following phrase, whatever it says to begin with, and then it'll say relating to taxation to take effect immediately, comma, tax levy. In addition, the Legislative Council's digest contains a simple statement. Generally, at the end of that digest, it says, this bill would take effect immediately as a tax levy. Now, these tax levy statements that are used in California bills don't have any explanation. Okay, remember I read the standardized language, and all it says is that this act provides for a tax levy and cites Article 4, but not anything more specific like Section 8C3. Anyways, there isn't a requirement to be fair for any explanation as opposed to, say, an urgency clause. But there are other instances in California bills where these types of statements are found in the plus sections at the end of a bill that do contain some explanation justifying or explaining the particular statement or declaration. So, for example, we use in California bills reimbursable mandate language. And in all the bills, it actually contains an explanation justifying or explaining this designation as a reimbursable mandate, which follows the word because. So here's one. This is pretty standardized language. No reimbursement is required by this act pursuant to Section 6 of Article 13B of the California Constitution because, and then it goes on to say, because the only costs that may be incurred by a local agency or school district will be incurred because this act creates a new crime or infraction, eliminates a crime or infraction, or changes the penalty for a crime or infraction within the meaning of Government Code Section 17556. And so it at least explains why reimbursement is not required by this legislative act. So in my mind, it raises the question whether other declaratory statements, such as the tax levy designation, should also contain an explanation of why the bill has been deemed a tax levy. Again, especially since tax levy isn't defined anywhere in the law. So here would be my example of what you would find going forward of an explanatory reason for a tax levy statement. This act provides for a tax levy within the meaning of subdivision C3 of Section 8 of Article 4 of the California Constitution. So I give the specific site, not just generally to Article 4. And then I add the following. Because it would change the rate of tax for personal income tax payers, and therefore shall go into immediate effect. So again, this version of a tax levy statement that I've drafted would cite the specific section of the state constitution and describe why we're deeming it a tax levy. So again, perhaps in my mind, at least a statement explaining the tax levy designation could be included in legislative bill analyses, for example.